Here we
Yeah.
go. So I'll start now. Welcome to the Locally Grown podcast. Today, my guest is Larry Lawton. Larry has a very interesting background, not typical for what we see here in the Locally Grown podcast. He was convicted for a string of jewelry store robberies along the Atlantic coast in the 1990s and spent 12 years in prisons, including in Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and my God, Rikers Prison in New York City. After his release from prison in 2007, Larry moved to Florida, where he began his career as an author, motivational speaker, and YouTuber. He's the founder also of the Reality Check program, which helps educate at risk kids on the consequences of a life of crime. Great work. In 2012, he published his first book, Gangster Redemption, which talks about his early life, his criminal life, and his post prison career. Very much an open book. He's been a vocal advocate for prisoners' issues and prison reform and has made several media appearances as an expert on burglary. Larry is the host of his own very successful YouTube channel that boasts over 1.4 million subscribers. And geez, I wish my audience was that big. Larry Lawton, welcome to the Locally Grown podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. Just to add just a hair to that, I'm really more known, and I've had my program. I built the program when I got out of prison. When I got out of prison, I built the Reality Check program, which helps at-risk young, and it really helps all young people because I
Sure.
believe all kids are at risk. And when I got out of prison, I saw so many young people coming to prison. Good kids make bad choices. Our system is broke, but we can get into that a little bit. But there's a lot of same themes, and they all think it's a joke, and it's not. And so I developed the Reality Check program, which now is the #1 program in the United States. It's been recognized on the floor of the United States Congress. It's used in court systems. It's used by police agencies. People get sentenced to the program. It's called the Reality Check program. And even how I developed the program is amazing. And I think that I'm a believer in fate. I think things happen for reasons. Why am I not dead? I've been shot. I've been scared twice. I mean, and then as we say, I just got on the line with you, and I lost a friend today who rode the game straight. I call it, and he died at 61 years old.
Oh
And
man, that's too young.
yeah. So, but I do think things happen for reasons, Jim. And again, what really got me just thinking about you when we connected, and we connected to a friend of ours, Congressman Posey, and George
Congressman Bill Posey.
Cacao. Yeah, and George Cacao is a very close friend of mine. It's his media guy and his assistant chief of staff. Been to George's wedding with the congressman. Been in Washington a lot, and so what got me is when you're opening of your book and your acknowledgments is your friends, and you say in the friends how you have a group of friends that you're all political sides of the spectrum, and I have the same exact thing. They don't care about my past. They care about what I do today. They know my heart's in the right place, and I'm talking very successful people, and we're talking about people on both sides of the aisle. Very
Mm-hmm.
liberal, some of them very conservative, some of them in the middle of the road, some of them and the best theme I think of it, Jim, is we all leave our lunch. We have lunch 4 or 5 days a week. We're
Mm-hmm.
very close. We dinner together. We vacation, a lot of us together. We have subsets. We have a very big group of really very, very good people, and we help a lot of people. But what I find is when we have our arguments, and we call them arguments. You mentioned in your book, so what you
We
call
call
it.
it the in our group we call it the rock fight.
Yeah, the rock fight. That's what I was
Right.
reading, and what I've learned in our groups is we never leave hating each other. We never
Yes.
leave. We might disagree, and we do. And but what you said is very true. I always tell people one of my strengths, I think, and probably yours, is I've been able to change my mind. I change. You
Yes.
can change my mind. A person can change my mind with logic, with statistics, or with not bullshit. I mean,
Right.
I have a meter. We all have a bullshit meter. That's why I talk about kids. I don't bullshit kids. They have the best bullshit meter in the planet, and you can't bullshit kids because they'll spot bullshit a mile away.
Oh
That's why
God, yeah.
successful program. But our group doesn't leave hating each other. doesn't, and we try to help each other. We try, and we then, if you can't, you come to an agreement, you accept each other, and you also find common ground on other things. And I think that is what's wrong with this country at this moment. We are so polarized on both sides of the aisle that it gets a little bit like, come on, guys. I remember when I marched for President Reagan. I'm looking at a thing that I marched for Reagan when he was inaugurated.
Yeah, first president that I voted for was Reagan.
Same with me. We're roughly the same age. And I actually marched for him. I was actually a young Republican at the time, and I'm neither any of that now. Like I said, I'm a libertarian. I went from Republican to Democrat to what the, they're all messed up.
Yeah.
So my point was, I look at that, and I remember when Tip O'Neill and President Reagan would sit and have a beer and
Right.
find common ground. And I look at that and I say, where is that in this country?
Oh God.
We need our young people to, and I do believe they're there, though, Jim. I do believe young people are sick of this shit too.
Yeah.
So I think
I am. So you've got kids as well as me. I think mine are younger than. I've got two kids in college now, but and they're great kids. But there's a tendency, I think, by our generation, and this is endemic, I think, to most generations. They think that their generation's better and the younger generation doesn't know shit. And maybe some of that's true with some of them, but that's the true for any generation. I think the younger generation now has got a really good bullshit meter, and they may believe differently on some things, but ultimately they're pretty pragmatic, and they're going to come down in decision making and make some good rational decisions. And that's what we need. We need citizens in this country that can put their to roll up their sleeves and work with people of different stripes and ideologies and come to decisions in good policy that we need in this country. And so I'm not as bearish on the young generation as a lot of folks.
Well, let me give you a quick story. I worked with the Weed and Seed program. I don't know if you remember that. That was a program that the government had, the Department of Justice, where they would go into neighborhoods, weed out the drug dealer stuff, and seed programs like my program and stuff. And I was one of their top programs in the Weed and Seed program at the Department of Justice. So I was on a board, and this is back in about 2012, 13.
Mm-hmm.
Around the time my program was really strong. I was recognized on the floor of Congress on the program, and I asked to testify, and I met a bunch of congressmen up there. And so I'm at a board. I'm at the Department of Justice, and we're sitting around one of those big tables, those. And now I'm sitting there, and at the time, I had, I just had the iPhone. It was pretty newish. I don't know, it was 7, whatever it was. And and some of the people at the table, and I was really disappointed, some police chiefs and stuff. Some of them said, some of these young people we have to give up on, we can't spend the resources. And boy, did that tick me wrong. I got up. I'm kind of a big guy. Not, I can be big. I'm a wide guy.
I'm looking at you now. You got a perfect head like me, bald. And you're thick like me. This is good. I can't wait to meet you in person. We're gonna do that.
Me either. We're definitely. I just lost. I went from 258 to 215. So I've been working hard on that.
That's good.
I got up, Jim, and I took my phone and I slammed it on the table, and everybody got silent. And I said, "Give up." I said, "Let me ask you something. Who in this room could program their phone quicker than their kid?" At the time, my daughter was 15. I have a daughter who's 27, so wow, it's longer than that. She's 20, well, she's 15, so that's 12 years ago. So that's 2010.
Yep.
2010. And I says, who in this room could program their phone quicker than their kid?
I can't.
I says, here's what happens. I says, you and I in this room, we take the directions, we open them up, hit the button, go the next way. We get there. What does your kid do? Gets the phone, starts working it, reboots it, redoes it. Here, daddy, here's your phone. And I says, what does that show us? They learn differently than us. They get to the same places we do, maybe sometimes quicker than us. So we're not smarter than our kids. We just have to understand they might learn a little differently than us.
Yeah.
And we have to accept the fact that we don't know it all. I laugh at that, Jim, because I'm on a different side. I tell young people every day, I says, listen, I'm not smarter than you, but I've been to a place you never want to go to.
Yeah.
Been to an area and I understand. It's like, let's take anything. You want to learn about electrician, you go to an electrician. You're a businessman. I want to learn about businesses. I'm coming to Jim. You want to learn about not going to prison or what prison is like or come see me. Everybody has experience. You can't beat life experience. Nobody can. No child can. We can. That's why I hang out with a lot of older people to this day.
Yeah.
They have more life experience. So I think I got to tell you people on your podcast and everywhere that we have to accept that we need to learn from young people. I'm very bullish on the young people. I'm not fucking bearish at all because I look at it and I say, wait a minute. I says, young people are more open to learning. They're different than us. They're not as closed-minded. Us, we think it's our way or the highway. A lot, not me, maybe not you, but a lot of our generations. This is the way to go. That's bullshit. We need to accept the fact that these young people have a lot to offer. People ask me all the time, Jim, how do you know so much about the gangs? And how do you know so much about what's going on in the streets with drugs in certain areas and stuff? I said, because I listen. They tell you, and they will tell you what's going on if you let them. But you can't come off like you're better than them or
talk down to them.
Right, exactly. Talk down. And I think that's a big lesson I think we need to learn with most people. Until you let them, everybody has a talent. Everybody. I don't care who you are, you have a talent. Everybody does. It's letting that talent grow and you talk locally grown, letting that talent grow and grow in a way that it can educate other people. And I think that's what we miss as an older generation.
I agree. And it's important that we get this right in this country because I think all of us look around us and we see big problems, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And we're going to have to, the next several years, have our big boy pants on, and we need all the best thinking we can muster to solve some of these problems. And I want to speak a little more about this within the context of kids. I mean, my wife and I are actively involved with at-risk kids in Indian River County. We've worked with Crossover Mission, an organization that takes these at-risk kids, probably some of the same kids that if we hadn't have gotten them, might have ended up in your program because they.
Well, we get them young. We get them before that. So no.
Oh yeah, no. So we're working with kids, in middle school and high school, and a lot of them are kids of color in Indian River County, but they show promise. So we do it through basketball. They want to play basketball at a pretty high level. We got a great coach, Antoine Jennings, who has a story that's right up your alley, was dealing the drugs, doing all that, and had a come to Jesus moment with a gun in his face. And that changed his life forever. His dad was in prison. So he's doing really, and I'm going to introduce you to Antoine, and I'd love to have you come in and talk with the Crossover Mission kids, because you would just give it another perspective. But listening to these kids, you have to, break down the barrier, because immediately, especially when they see this white guy or white woman or whatever, it's like, I can't listen to you, right? What can you teach me? So you really got to bust down that barrier, and then you listen, and then you figure out how they learn. And once you find that groove, we got these kids. My kids went to private school, St. Edward's School, very good school, sort of Christian type orientation, but all the kids who graduate from there go to top colleges around the country. And we just never had many kids of color there. I'm not an original Floridian, but Florida is the South, and it's a different place than where you and I grew up in the Northeast. And these kids, for whatever reason, just didn't go to that school. It wasn't for them. Now we've got dozens of our crossover kids going to St. Edward's, going off to college, in most cases, first in their family ever to do that. And we know this works. So I've seen it with crossover. So I know what you're doing works too. And it's it's given the status of our country now, that's some of the most important work that we can do as American citizens is dig in and raise up the boats underneath us so that we can all prosper.
Well, Jim, first of all, great job. I mean, crossover. I work with a lot of mission. I work with a lot of youth organizations all over. Up here, they have they have Crosswinds. They have a couple other different ones up here. Matter of fact, there's a police officer who just retired, a guy named Paul Pierce, down in your area.
Yep.
He ran the boxing program in Fort Pierce and stuff. He's a good friend of mine, and he helps youth all the time and through the boxing programs. We have one up here. We have a couple of the doctors, good friends of mine that I said are in our private group that we all do a lot for the youth. Because listen, we all know it. You can only do so much, and you can only get so much, and you can only go on so many vacations, so to speak. that you got to look at it and say, wait a minute, what am I going to leave for my kids? I have grandkids now. I have a couple of grandkids. My oldest son's 32, and he grew up with his dad in jail, so he grew up in the streets of Brooklyn, and he's a rough kid, but he grew up with a lot of respect. He knew that my respect meter was a little bit different. I wasn't going to accept certain things, even from where I was, and he knew it, and he knew my reach was long. But and my daughter as well, they didn't grow up with a lot because I was in prison. I had a lot, left some to survive, and the kids had to grow up the right way, and it can be done though. We keep thinking they need that opportunity. What you're doing there and give them an effort, whether they go to college or not. Whether we need, in my opinion, I think we need more trade schools. I need more
Totally. Yep.
and more physical. Some kids just aren't built for college, and we also know that some of the richest men in this country ever never or quit college. Most of them, whether it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, they quit college. They dropped out because they saw something that was better.
Totally not
advocating that.
Not the answer for everybody. And as a matter of fact, we probably have millions of kids that have spent a lot of money and debt and time to get college degrees that aren't worth the paper they're written on. And we need more tradesmen. I mean, just take a look at the inflation we have, trying to get hire people that can do plumbing or electrical or HVAC. I mean, construction. I mean, these are real trades that pay very, very well. So I'd like to leg into a little bit about your background here because it's so interesting. I mean, watching a bunch of YouTube channels over the last few days, it's like, holy moly, it's a different reality. And this reality that you come from is obviously what informs your work with the at-risk kids and just the general, education of the public. So tell us a little bit about your early life. I know you grew up in Long Island. You got that nice thick Long Island accent.
No. I didn't grow up in Long Island. I grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, the Bronx. Okay. Wow.
I was a city boy. Long Island is where we used to rob cars. I actually was born right across the Trogs next.
So quick question: Mets or Yankees?
Right now I got to be a Yankee, but I was
good.
I was a Met fan because I could see Shea Stadium literally, but I was in the Bronx, so we used to cut school and go to Yankee games and go down. They were $1 a seat, $1 bleacher.
Imagine that.
Back in the days, man.
Bleacher
and we used
preacher.
to take the number 6 train down to 161st Street and the Grand Concourse and go to Yankee games, day games, and cut school at $1 a seat. I mean, bleacher seats was nothing to go to a Yankee game. And then and Shea Stadium was across the Trogs Neck Bridge, the Whitestone Bridge in Trogs Neck Bridge. And you used to see the lights at Shea Stadium. So I remember seeing Willie Mays back in the
70s.
Yeah, I remember the Mets won in '69. I was 8 years old. I watched some games and went to a game in 1969 when they won the World Series. So it's, I have, of course, I'm rooting for them now. I was rooting for the Mets, pissed me off. They should have did better. Mm-hmm. And then the Yankees now, luckily they squeezed through Cleveland. But, as a guy who grew up in the Bronx, so we grew up in the streets. I grew up with gangsters, and you either were a gangster or a cop. I mean, that's just the way it was. The cop, fireman,
So
or
how did
bank.
you get sucked into the sort of criminal life? I mean, you grew up in, in a rough neighborhood, but I mean, what dragged you into that?
My whole neighborhood, well, listen, my neighborhood was either gangsters, and the gangsters had the money. I mean, and they were nice. They were. My next door neighbor used to give us $50 to wash a car back in the '70s, early
That's big
'70s.
dollars,
Oh, and then I was making money. I was, the football tickets. I started my first thing with the football tickets. I was making $125 a week back in 1972.
scalping them.
Three. Not no no football tickets were where you bet. You go to the neighbor, the
Oh,
telephone
okay,
man, the teacher, and they put $1, and if they get three wins, they win $5. And there's tickets. It's a
right.
gambling ticket, and I used to go hustle them all around the neighborhood. And I was making money at 12 years old, and it was my dad used to go. My dad built the World Trade Center. He was the head guy in 1968 to 72. Matter of fact, I remember being on the roof of the 103rd floor. I got pictures of it. They tied ropes around us and let us crawl to the edge.
Oh
This
my
is a
God.
103rd story. I mean, it was amazing. And my dad was the head guy in the tin knocking, which is the duct work that goes throughout the whole
Right.
entire. He had 200 men, and they worked there. And and he used to literally have to pay off mobsters. I mean, he used to go, and I used to ride with my dad. I was very close with my dad, and he didn't want me in that, but he was, he was on the fringes of it, having to know it. You had to be in the construction business. You had to build, and you talk about, that's why he said the trades, man. My brother to this day retired from the union, does very well in retirement, and they made good money, especially up north. Forget
Oh
about
yeah.
it. You want to talk about money? They're making $100 something an hour, and as guys in the union up there, and they retire. They all retire after paying houses and coming to Florida. You don't understand
Oh
that,
yeah. Yeah.
and they do very well, and I'm very happy for them all. You have to want that, and I think some people do, but in my life, let me not get off track. So I got sucked into that life.
So like the Bronx, you remember the movie The Bronx Tale with Chaz
Oh,
Palminteri and De Niro?
oh,
That sounds like it's your life.
it's so funny. That was just about my life. Uh, we didn't have the race thing, wasn't that they had in that movie, wasn't
Right.
us. But I mean, it was race. I mean, that was busing, if you remember the
Sure.
bus.
Yeah. Yeah. We had it in Boston for sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't that way. If you lived in our neighborhood, you were good. It didn't matter what color. You could have been a Martian, and if you were in that neighborhood, you were
That's
good. If
right.
you weren't,
You're part of the crew.
yeah, and if you weren't, you weren't. I mean, we defended our little neighborhoods, and we had our neighborhood. I grew up with a lot of actually very successful people to this day. From Michael Kay, who's the announcer for the Yankees. He's a good
Oh
friend
yeah.
of mine, and the Yes Network, and Dougie Marone was a coach of the Jacksonville. A couple other players. Bobby Bonilla went to school with my sister, the Mets.
Hmm.
So a lot of, when I come from that kind of an area, it was a very eclectic area. So everybody, whether it's a Jewish guy, whether it's a black guy, or it doesn't matter. I went to Lehman High School. We had 5,000 students. It's
Right. Melting pot.
yeah, it was. It sure was a melting pot. And and listen, the Bronx, I enjoyed it. We didn't. Wasn't like I was growing up. We weren't rich by any stretch. We were lower middle class. I mean, we tried. My dad was trying to raise 5 kids, and we had a little bungalow house. And you made ends meet, and nobody looked at people like it was like today's world. Like they all have to keep up with the Joneses, so to
Class
speak.
oriented. Right.
Yeah,
You're all
class.
part of the same class, and it's called the neighborhood. That's the
Yeah,
class.
exactly, Jim. And you had more people, had more, and people had less, but nobody cared. You hung out, you
I mean,
drank.
even if you look at some of the mob movies that we grew up with, the real gangsters, the Italian mob, they lived in very modest houses, right? They were
Lived in my neighborhood.
multimillionaires, right? You don't go out and you buy fancy cars, because you got to fit in the neighborhood, right? The money's elsewhere, and it's usually used to grease the skids for other things. And how much could they spend? Really, it's their joy was their family and their where they lived.
My neighbor, literally the house next to us, it was nicer, and it was Mr. Landy. He was a mobster, a big mobster, and he used to, drive. We didn't have school buses. We walked to school or took a
Right.
city bus. I mean, I think today, I think, oh, these kids, oh, they can't do that. They can't.
Oh
Are
my
you kidding me? We were driving. We were on the trains and the city buses, and and there was crap going on just like it is today. So it's not, oh, we didn't have. Yes, you did. You just didn't hear about it because you didn't have the media. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have ESPN. We had 5 TV stations.
Right.
6
ABC,
TV.
NBC,
Yeah.
CBS, and maybe a pub PBS.
Yeah, a PBS we had 2, 4, 5, 7 on 9/11 and 13, maybe so I mean that was New York City.
Right.
So so you didn't have it. So you got out and you met your neighbors, you played, you commingled, you had a barbecue at the end of the block. There was a Labor Day party, like
Sure.
great things they had, and it was very, very tight knit communities. I don't know if that's part. I think that's part of the reason things aren't the way they are
Right.
when you and I grew up. And you grew up the same way in Boston, so it's kind of like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's similar. And Boston, and I hate the Yankees. I hate the Mets. I respect
Of course
them.
you do. Of course you do.
Everyone is a Red Sox fan, knows where they were in 1986 when the ball went through Buckner's legs.
I sure do.
Yeah, I was on the phone. I lived in New York for a number of years, worked on Wall Street early in my career. So I had friends down there. And I remember being in a bar in Boston, and it was at the end of the game, and I'm talking to them, going, "It's over, guys. You guys are going to lose." And then while I was on the phone, the ball goes through Buckner's legs. Like, oh my God, this is awful.
Mookie Wilson. I remember
Mookie.
like it was yesterday. Keith Hernandez was smoking a cigarette in the manager's office, thinking it was done. I had to call him back out of the dugout. Wow,
That's right.
Memories, man.
Carl Yastrzemski, on that subject, I remember growing up watching the Red Sox on TV back when they were really kind of shitty. But Carl Yastrzemski was like their big star. One of the all-time
last man to hit the cycle. Not the cycle.
Triple Crown.
Triple Crown.
Yeah, but Yaz, especially if he was having a bad day at the plate, they would pan into the dugout and he'd have a butt going. Like during the game, it's like, wow, that's amazing. You never see that today.
Oh, no.
I want to just leg into some of the juicy parts of your life here because I think this is really going to be fascinating. I mean, I read some of your bio and those big heists that ultimately got you pinched. Tell us a little bit about that, about like walk us through the planning and execution of it, because it sounded like a good idea and you ended up with millions but ultimately, you got caught, but it was working for a while. Tell us how you planned and how you executed those things.
Well, yeah, I became the biggest jewel robber in the country. It started by me actually a setup robbery. The first robbery was a setup with the mob. I was associated with the Gambinos, and so I was, they, hey, Larry, you got an insurance job to do down there, and I knew the deal. So
Right.
and you still had to rob it. See, the owner knew who it was. We knew where the stuff was, and we knew how many people were going to be there. But the employee had no idea,
Right.
because the employee knew what was going on.
But that was an inside job.
It was an inside job, so I knew there was no way that somebody else was coming in. So, but I had to do a little bit of a casework on it and know what was going on, and I did it. And sure enough, after that robbery, and I made $150,000 in my pocket.
Wow.
And I'm all, whoa, there's a lot of money now. You're talking, this is in 1980. Was it about 88, 89? I think it was. And I go, wait a minute, there's a lot here,
Yeah.
And then I said, wait a minute, if I can do this with just that little info, what happens if I didn't have it? So what? Obvious as a somewhat intelligent guy and high IQ, and I moved on. I started looking how to do these things, and I started doing robberies. And obviously, I had the outs. That's the key. I had defenses to get rid of stuff, because that's where most people get caught. Where are you going to get rid of $1 million in jewelry, without getting caught? Most people get caught that way. I didn't. I got caught by great police work, and I give the FBI a lot of credit. Matter of fact, I have no qualms against law enforcement ever, because they did their job. I did my job, so to speak. I hate to say, call it like that. I don't want anybody out there to get the wrong idea. that this is the way to go, because it's not. I mean, I caused a lot of damage. I didn't hurt anybody doing robberies, Jim, or any of that
Yeah,
nature, but you put fear into people. In bad memories, a lot of things that go. I hope people get over them. They should. But it's not right. There's no justification. And I
of
did my
course.
time for it. And once you do your time, you should be able to afford the opportunity to get back in society. And that's where I'm very, I guess, pissed at the system and the whole entire way we handle young people, especially if people of color, people of no means at all. They come out and their foot's on their neck, and we expect them to just, oh, okay, we're good now. Go back into society. And every turn, every step of the way, they get stepped on. But coming back to my robbery, so I started going robbing more and more, and had my own crew. I built it up to millions of dollars. I had that. I was buying businesses. I become a businessman. I owned vending machine companies, 2 nightclubs, Loomis siding companies, and I bought more and more businesses, more for washing money
Yeah, of
than
course.
I did for. But I learned the businesses. I mean,
Hmm.
I understand business very well, and obviously, uh, you know, if you want to be successful in anything in life, you better learn it from the ground up. And I tell people, look, you want to be a businessman, you want to own a restaurant, well, be a busboy. Be
That's right.
learn that business so nobody can bullshit you.
That's
I
right.
own a business now, and I can edit videos, I can do what I do. I don't, but I can, and
Hmm.
I've done it because I want to know what I'm paying for, how much it's worth, and everything else that goes along the way. There's no escaping that. Obviously, maybe you're in the bigger realms of business. It's a different animal, and I'm sure it
It's
is.
no, that's actually not true. It really isn't. Even at scale, I mean, there's CEO after CEO after CEO of big companies that started out in the mailroom, right? When you learn the business, and this goes to my philosophy of government, governing from the ground up, the grassroots, the shortest distance between, from a government example, shortest distance between um, the people that are making the decisions, the politicians, the leaders, and the people that they govern. The bigger that distance becomes, the more opportunity for shenanigans there is. And that's the same way in a business. And, in my last company in Servio, we had about 400 employees when I left and we sold the business. But we used to always talk about line of sight to the customer. So no matter where you are in the organization, from CEO down to, a data entry person, you have to see a line of sight between what you do and the value you deliver to that customer. You got to know what that is. And the more you know what that is, the better you're going to serve that customer and the more valuable you're going to be to the organization. So it all starts from the ground up.
I don't know if I have my own cigar. I started a
I
cigar.
saw that. Crooked
Yeah,
Diamond cigar.
Crooked Diamond's doing very well. I mean, we just launched. I partnered with the third largest company in the world, Oliva Cigars. I had him on my podcast, the
Hmm.
CEO, and talk about that. He has 6,100 employees, 6,100
Wow.
employees. And he was on my show, and he is 43 years old. He lives here in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and their main office is in Miami. And he started out as a sales rep for that company,
Of course.
Oliva Cigar, in the central part of the country. So you got a good point there, even with the bigger companies. But I look at companies in that way, that, like myself, I like to know a lot. Like even the cigar company now that I'm working, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work. People think this. People think business is easy. It's so much work.
Oh God.
Sometimes it'd be easier to work for somebody. It's just, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because you're never off. But that's okay. But you have to find your passions. Like, I'm not a kind of guy that's a 9 to 5 guy. That's just not Larry.
Yeah.
I
Me
mean,
either.
I'm a guy who loves to work, finds a passion, reads about it, watches something. I'm lucky I can watch a baseball game. I have to force myself sometimes to get away from the computer, away from what I'm doing, away from doing videos, or away from
I
doing
think
stuff.
that keeps us young. I mean, honestly, when I look at especially my parents' generation, the goal was to, retire and go to Florida.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what happens? They end up not doing anything, a lot of golf, maybe fishing and so on. And then they get slow. They die early, right?
very true. Very.
When you stay in the game, and it keeps your brain moving, it keeps you interested, it gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
I really believe that. I can't even imagine people say, Larry, when are you going to quit? When are you going to do that? Quit? I'm just starting. I said, I was, first of all, I don't even count the years I was in prison. So I don't even consider me my age. I
Right.
said, so
Yeah, you're really probably 49 in dog
yeah,
years.
that's what I say. Yeah, take the 12 right off. But I look at that, Jim, and you kind of think like me. When I was, like I says, just even reading the book and the friends you had, that just blew me away. I mean, I couldn't get that out of my head this morning, and I was running around for my mom because I take care of my mom. She's going to be 90, and I had to move
Yeah.
back a couple
My
years.
I, my 90-year-old dad, I'm in Park City now. And we're heading back to Florida in a couple of weeks. But I have my 90-year-old dad out here for a week, and I took him on rides in the mountains, stuff that he's never seen before, and it was amazing. But it's taking care of your parents and your elders, and living in Florida, as you know, that's all over the place. People
Oh,
our age, hundreds of thousands of them doing the same deal. We live, but we got to take care of our parents, and that's part of your work.
I'm doing that here, Jim, and I'll never regret it, no
Nope.
matter what. People said, Larry, you left $1 million condo in Fort Lauderdale. I said, and I'd leave a 50 million. I wouldn't care what it was. You only get so much time with your parents, and especially somebody like myself who went through a lot of rough times himself. And his mom, was there, never judged you, wrote the letters, visited. My dad and I were very close. I got out of prison. My dad had Alzheimer's, so it was really rough.
Yeah.
And I had to, you change your dad's diapers, and I had to deal with that because I did that. I put myself in prison. It's a lot of eyes there, and I hate the word "I," but in
You
this
take
case,
it, but you take ownership for, that's one of the cool things, and that's why you're here, really. You take ownership for what you did, and you've changed your life now in an incredibly positive direction. So, I mean, if you can do it, it's available to anybody.
that's my big thing, Jim. I try to express to young people when I speak all over the country. I'm actually, I'm going to Ohio soon, and I speak all over, and I try to express to young people, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. And it doesn't take. I got out of prison in debt, everything wrong, a record, bad record, multiple convictions, organized crime ties, everything wrong, and I can make it. You can make it. I think it's part of what drives you. And as I tell people who get out of prison, a very good thing. I tell, listen, it's easy when everything's going right. It's when things go wrong and you don't go back to that other side and you keep on that path and you find those mentors that are going to guide you. It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with guidance and where you're going to go direct. Though, yes, you'll get help with the right people because people see what you want to do. And I think I helped a young person who was a convicted felon, a great story. And I get him a job as in a lawn service company a
Yep.
friend of mine owned, and I said, listen, here, I'm gonna get you this job. I don't know, I think it's 10 years ago. I says, pays about $10 an hour. I says, but listen, just do your work, be there every day, be dependable,
Right.
don't bitch, and go to work every day and work hard and just see where it goes. I told him, will you give me a year doing that? Let's guarantee Mr. Lawton, I'll do that. I said,
Yep.
just do that. Told the guy, vouched for the guy, he gets the job. About 4 months later, the owner of the company's got to go on vacation. He says to the kid, can you watch the crew? You've been here, you're really good. He was sure. He did it. Watch the crew. They did all their stuff, did everything. The owner of that company ended up having like a 12-house little development. He couldn't do it. And he says to the guy, he goes, do you want this development? He goes, I can't do it. I don't have a mower. He goes, I'll tell you what, I'll sell you a mower. You pay me off. He goes, you have a pickup truck. He goes, you have a trailer, you can use that trailer and pickup truck, but you got to do it on weekends and you can't quit for 6 months. Because I'll do it. This kid worked
Opportunity.
hard. Kid worked hard, did it every weekend. Boom. To this day, Jim, he's in Boca Raton with a big company himself, working a big development around a mega golf course in Boca. He's got like 3 crews out there working. He's doing so successful. And he goes, man, Mr. Lawton, he gave me the best advice. And I said, you know what the advice was? Just work hard. You know, people want dependability and working hard.
That's right.
It's so hard. And you know, Jim, as a business owner, it's hard to find. And I try to let young people know, you know, I call it the now generation. I don't blame them because it's us who taught them this. They want everything now, you know, get it now. You know, I want to be the boss now. I know everything now. You don't. You'll learn. You made another great statement in your opening book, and I just started doing it. I'm going to really read that probably pretty quickly. You made a great statement in your book saying, you know, Jesus, just passed my thought that, oh Jesus,
Delayed gratification.
No, in the opening. No, in the not the opening. In the no, man, it's gonna click to me. It's my brain. My brain is so full, but it'll come to me. It's something about with work and how people want certain things so quick. Man, that's gonna drive.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look and get it. But I'll catch it. But your book, I'm telling you, your book really catches you. The acknowledgement caught me. I mean, to want to read more.
That's good. I love to hear that. I mean, it's as it being an author yourself. One thing I will tell you between writing a book and doing podcasts and blogs and so on, I have great respect for people that do this for a living now, journalists and so on, to be able to have to get up every day and write something that's worthwhile writing about or talking about something. Yeah. It's hard work. You know, it looks glamorous, but you know, you got to be focused. It's like any other business. You got to deliver value to your audience, but you got to have something to say that's worthwhile. I want to just.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to quickly leg into a couple of things. We're getting into towards the end of the show here. I could go all day long. I mean, this is awesome. I want to have you on again. Would love to do that.
Love to do it live when we're together.
Sure. If you got time I'd love to be on your podcast and we'll talk about all.
Come on right up to the studio right here. I built it in the house with my mother.
Yeah, can't wait. You're on the list. As soon as I get back to Florida, we're gonna grab lunch together. But in one of your YouTubes, you talk about the unwritten rules of prison. Give us a couple of those. I mean, I just look at that because it's a whole. You know, people think of prison. It's like, oh, you just kind of go away and you're not heard from. But there's a whole reality there. There's an economy there. There's people buying and selling things. I mean, give us a little flavor of that.
Prison is it's a universe, or it's its own world with its own money, with its own set of rules and set of values. Even, I mean, you know, what's accepted on the outside might not be accepted on the inside. Of course, snitching and your word means something. I like that. You know, I think that respect. You don't bump into somebody in prison without saying, excuse me, you might get killed. You don't know who you're messing with. And that's not even funny, Jim, because I've seen it. I've watched somebody get killed over a cigarette case holder back when they used to smoke cigarettes, you know, like the plastic cover. He was killed. I had a cellmate. I felt, it hurts me to this day. He was killed for $5, and he didn't even belong in the prison. And he owed a guy $5, and the guy thought he was going to beat him, and he wasn't. And the guy killed him. And there's certain things in prison. You know, you talk unwritten rules. There's unwritten rules of respect in the cell. You know, I mean, I had my rules. I wasn't a good guy. You couldn't. There's a guy walking around.
Clean the sink.
Yeah, you know, I don't like to try to. You know, I wasn't. You shave me. You know, I mean, I live, I eat. This is my house. You know, when you walk up to a cell, you knock on the frame of the door if the door is open. You don't just walk into somebody's cell. It's like walking into their house. And you think, wow, what do you think? It's all together. No. People are. I was in prisons, Jim. We had 2,000 inmates, 880 had life.
Wow.
Prison, never getting out.
With life sentences.
It's called letters in the feds.
Mm-hmm.
Feds, people get prisons misconstrued. They think, oh, I'd rather be in the state than the Fed. No, you wouldn't. That's why, when Georgia case comes, they don't understand. I know both systems. In the federal system, if you go to a maximum security prison, everybody in there is either a mob boss, a drug kingpin, a hitman, a armed robber, a fucking, they're bad people. Mm-hmm. And I hate to, and it's a place that the respect goes a long way. And I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. And in those places, those people, we had 880 people who had life. 200 fight their case legally. I mean, literally, they're in the law about. That's me. I was a guy who was in the law. I was facing life. I was in the law library every day. I got my law degree. I ended up I'm a certified. I can't be a lawyer because I'm a convicted felon, but I have the credits in college to do it. I'm a certified paralegal right on my wall. Mm-hmm. College graduate on that, and I studied the law for 10 years, and I have friends of mine that you'll meet when you come on up, judges and stuff. And they said, Larry knows more about the federal law than I do. Yeah. I mean, I studied it. That's what I did. I mean, literally, not 8 hours a day and go home to my wife, not weekends and go watch the kid. No, 24/7. You bring your law.
You were more than that. You were living it. Living the law.
Living it, literally. And then, so 200, then you have 400 who literally fall into the life. I mean, they get a guy as a husband, a wife, and they live their life, and they're just, they're mummies to the world. They're literally, they go to work in Unicor, they become system. And then you have 200 who are psychopaths, Jim. Yeah. I've met some of them. They're literally, there was a guy who cut a guy's head off with a shank. There's people, I mean, some sick stuff that I've witnessed and saw.
That's got to be, is that the minority though?
Of oh yeah, I mean, obviously it's the minority, but no, the violence is not the minority. The violence is the majority. But the psychopaths, they're in those maximum security prisons, every one of those prisons, and you'll see it all the time. And it's just, that's the environment you're living in. It's just not, now it's not the environment of prison itself, because most people aren't in those maximum security prisons. I was in one because I wouldn't tell. The federal government didn't like that I wouldn't snitch. And don't think they play fair. I know, I'm not here to.
Probably kept you alive.
What kept me alive?
Not snitching.
Oh, I'm sure that's part of it too, to this day. And it made me who I am. Jim, I had an opportunity to tell, and I wasn't scared, to be honest, of the mob or anybody. I had a 15-month-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, just turned 7 a day old. And I had a lot of money, and the government offered me 3 years, which I would have been almost done with that after, what they wanted me to do, kept my money, and I wouldn't do it. And I don't know why. I think it's just something that was built into me from my parents and about my word. And I think it means to me to this day, my word means more to me than anything. Oh, yeah. More to me than what money will ever mean to me.
Yeah. It's an asset on your balance sheet, is your word.
I have to believe that. My son and daughter, my son works for me. I'm blessed there. My son is my manager. My daughter, she's in Fort Lauderdale. She's not ready yet. She wants me to open a bar for her, but because she works in the business, a bartender and a waitress, and she does well. She's happy, and that's good for her. I don't want to push them, and but I'm very close with my 2 children, and they're very proud of their dad. They know it now, and of course it hurt. My daughter didn't know who I was. She thought I was a truck driver. They came so many things until one of her cousins told them, "No, your dad's a gangster. He's in jail." I mean, it's funny. They laugh about it all today. But my son, he grew up in Brooklyn in the gangster world. So my son understood a lot of his friends, and his dad's friends, were away. And so I just look at that as something that everybody has to deal with themselves. And I'm over the fact, there was a time in my life, Jim, I got to give this for your part because I know we're running out of time. I want people to understand about hate. You can't hate. Let me tell you what happened to me. I was strapped down naked, beaten and tortured, and literally pissed on by guards for 11 straight months.
Oh my
I
God.
was fighting the abuse.
Did you say guards, prison guards?
By guards? Yeah, it's the opening of my book. And matter of fact, when you read the first 4 pages, you won't stop because it talks about what happened to me, and it's all documented and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for 5 years, Jim, I was planning that man's murder. I really was. And it consumed me so much that I ended up reading a lot, and I found out where hate was killing me from the inside. I had to say to myself, how sad is this guy's life if he has to abuse a man who's in this part of his
No
life?
kidding.
He must go home and his wife must beat him. He must have the worst life in the world. Who the hell knows? But for somebody to abuse somebody who's in that part of it, and I'm telling you, I was strapped there. They call it 4-pointy naked, strapped down naked, beaten, tortured once a month. I was in the hole for 3 years. And it took a lot of, I guess, in a strand, a lot of, I guess I'm blessed. I'm not a religious man. I'm a spiritual person. I've seen a lot of crazy shit in religion. I'm very spiritual, meaning I believe in something, but I'm an agnostic, if you know what that is.
There's God. All you need to do is look up in the stars at night.
And who made that, right? Pretty much, that's about all I got to know.
I don't know what it looks like, or it's a he or she or whatever, but we know that we're not alone in this universe.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly how I look at things. So, and I had to really take that hate. And I very, to this day, I even categorize, I don't use the word hate because hate kills the person.
Yeah.
Hate, all hate does is hurt you because the person you hate don't even know it.
Yeah, it's toxic. And the worst part about it is it has a physical effect on you. If you're always bitter and hateful, I mean, that's why they call them the 7 deadly sins. It actually, we have medical science to prove that this will kill you. It will kill you, right? If you're gonna live a shorter life if you're oriented that way.
No question, Jim, that young people and people in your audience, and I hope if they want to know more, I mean, I listen, they could look me up and look.
We're gonna get you when I get back to Florida. We're gonna get you meet Antoine Jennings, and you guys are 2 peas in a pot. You'll be able to really help him. He's got a great program, but he's got his hands full. I mean, one of the YouTubes I saw, you mentioned the Indian River Youth Correctional Institution. So you're familiar with this? Yeah. So Antoine knows people in there. I mean, I'm just so happy that Bill Posey and his office got us together because we're going to talk more and we're going to get more involved with what each other's doing.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to have you up. You can come have lunch with my crew.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Well, this has been
the best roast beef sandwich in the state of Florida. I can guarantee you that.
No kidding. You got a place for that?
Oh my gosh. A matter of fact, we have lunch. I told you every 5 days a week. This group that has lunch. It's usually 4 or 5. Fridays is like 10, 12, 15, 18 of us sometimes. And we have such a really good group of guys. And you'll meet doctors and judges and lawyers and business people, venture capitalists, and a bunch of people.
That's awesome. What a scrum. I love that.
You'll come on and and again, all political spectrums, and great guys. Great. And I want you to meet them. And anyway, but I'll definitely do that. And I'd love to help some people. Listen, everything, and you know this as well as I do, is time. My biggest thing and your biggest thing.
Right.
It's one thing we can't get back.
I need a couple of lifetimes to get it all done.
Oh man,
we don't get that though.
We do. We don't, and that's okay. That's okay. Right. So you got to make the best as you can, and when you can, and do the best you can, and let the chips fall where they may. I'm not a believer in so to speak, heaven and hell. I'm not. I'm a believer in you do what you can, and the stars are gonna fall where they were.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're doing God's work. There's no doubt about that. Thank you so much, Larry Lawton, for being on the Locally Grown podcast, and we'll definitely do this again. And for the rest of the audience, remember, united we stand, divided we fall, each one for the other, and all for all. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Very good broadcast. Thanks, Jim.